Hola, bem-vindo a Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires is at the heart of the event as the start and finish of the Dakar Rally, a truly magnificent city with history all around.
Bienvenidos al Dakar 2010.
It is, of course, the home of the tango dance, world famous, evocative and sexy. In amongst the history is a modern pulsating heart, but if it's architecture you're after, then this is the place to be.
Hola, bienvenido a Buenos Aires.
Tendrán la oportunidad de descubrir dos bellos países, Argentina, Chile.
Suerte a todos los participantes.
In downtown Buenos Aires, the Dakar Caravan has assembled for the annual blast through the world's toughest terrain. But only after a big 3-day show has been laid on for the fans from all over the world who've made the trip to see the motorsport machinery par excellence. The Dakar had a stunning send-off here last year in front of 500,000 people. This year, even more are expected to follow the rally through Argentina and over the other side of the Andes into Chile. The route is 80% new with a big part in the Atacama Desert, 7 days from Copiapo to Iquique. 2,000 kilometers into the north, it'll be a sporting and a hazardous run up there with all sorts of very difficult terrain as well as heat. As you can see, here the weather is wonderful, but in the Atacama Desert the temperatures will be much, much higher. It's the 32nd Dakar Rally, and for the second year, we're in South America. Starting from the capital, Buenos Aires, on New Year's Day, the competitors travel west to the first overnight stop in Colón, before getting into the action up towards Córdoba and immediately into the mountains. The crews will climb over 3,000 meters on the fourth stage to Copiapo as we enter the 20-million-year-old Atacama Desert that's 50 times drier than Death Valley in California. After 7 stages and exactly half the mileage, it's into Antofagasta for the rest day. The second half of the Dakar starts with some terribly difficult stages as the run down towards Copiapo, La Serena and the capital city of Santiago finishes off the Chilean side of things before the climb back over the Andes towards San Juan, San Rafael and into Santa Rosa. The last of the 9,000 kilometers and 14 stages will be into Buenos Aires, where the first winners of 2010 will be crowned. The Argentina-Chile Dakar 2010. Same places, new adventure. The Dakar organisers have been working hard over the past 12 months to find a new route for the 14 stages. They spent over 4 months in total finding the best and sometimes the hardest way over some of the world's toughest terrain. Former winner Jean-Pierre Fontenay has time to admire the stunning view, but for the recce crews, the route was a balance of access, the environment and local politics. Not easy in the Atacama Desert. The route director David Castera made a route easier in some ways, but harder in others. The main lesson from last year was that these dunes are very soft and can sometimes bear the weight of all the categories, but on other dunes the trucks may sink, so we've decided to split the route in some places for the trucks, for the bikes, for the cars. The stages will be a little shorter, but the sting in the tail will surely be that they're going to be harder. However, there are many more stages in Chile this year, more stages that will have more sand in them and therefore bringing them much greater challenges. Jean-Pierre Fontenay saying we've discovered new things going further into the Atacama Desert, and in fact we found that we go back to the spirit we had years ago when crossing famous places such as the Tenere. We've got everything. With 7 stages each for Argentina and Chile, the desert will play much more part of the drama than last year, reminding people of the true Dakar roots in Africa, where it was for 30 years. The biggest problem is when less powerful cars are maybe going to be following through the tracks of the first cars that went through earlier in the day. That can give them problems, and that is going to be one of the difficulties for the runners further back. That's what Fontenay is explaining to us. And the other problems that they have found is that the recce that takes place during the winter months here in South America, that means that the sand is really a little harder and not so soft. By the time the event gets underway in January, it's the height of the summer. And now that has been taken into account for the 2010 Dakar event, and the organisers, well, they even then found that during the winter, even they got stuck. It took them over an hour to get out of this hole.
C'est pas gagné. On l'oublie.
In downtown Buenos Aires, the Dakar caravan has assembled for the annual thrash over the world's most difficult terrain. But only after a massive 3-day show has been put on for the fans who have come from all over the world. Japanese, Australians, South Africans, Brits, everybody is here to see what really is a truly breathtaking event. Even if motorsport is not your number one love, you just have to see this to get some idea of how big the Dakar really is.
Watch out!
Onto the motorcycles. KTM are once more going to be the bike to beat this year. The Austrian brand are looking to equal Yamaha's record total tally of 9 victories this season. But there are big changes afoot in the world of Rally Raid. This is the last year of the big bikes. 450cc is the way forward for the Dakar. This is the final year of the over 450cc bikes, them having to install an air restrictor in order to regulate their top speed. We have decided to restrict the power of the big bikes by restricting the air into the engine. With the restrictor, it will give them less power to the rear wheel. It's less power, but it reduces the gap between the big bikes and the 450s. We'll check this restrictor every day throughout the event to make sure it's always at the same diameter. We were really worried because we thought it would be impossible to be competitive with this restrictor, but the guys back at KTM have worked on it, and now I feel very confident because our bike is now competitive. New rules and new manufacturers. And a mark that is really new is Sherco, David Castello. Now, not only a rider, but the team manager too. He says they had to change the rules to get the new manufacturers. And this year we have Sherco, Aprilia, BMW and Yamaha. And I think the fans watching on TV will enjoy seeing many changes for the places. Next year, it'll be 450cc for everybody. So the future is 450.
L'avenir, c'est vraiment la 450.
Castello had terrible luck last year with a puncture on the very first stage, dropping him time, only for a terrible bee sting to hamper him later on. Let's hope his luck is better in 2010. Aprilia are here too with their all-new 450cc V-twin. They're committed for the next 3 years. Chilean hero Francisco Lopez heading the Italian factory's charge. He's going to be one to watch over the top of the Andes. Yamaha once more have David Frétigné spearheading their effort. The super-fast Frenchman already having won stages aboard the Svelte Semi-Works effort machine. I've always done the Dakar on this kind of bike, and everyone says I have a huge advantage on it. It's true that I know the bike, but the rally is so long that I start with the spirit inside me to really give my maximum. Olivier Pan is on a similar Yamaha 450 that originally had two-wheel drive, but it was eventually considered not worth the trouble. He's going to be another youngster coming up. Portugal's Helder Rodriguez has won Dakar stages before. This time, he's also on a Yamaha. BMW have won the Dakar 6 times before, but this time Paulo Gonçalves is on the lead privateer BMW. The German brand won in the early days of the event and then in the 2000s with Richard Sankt. But the main man that they all want to beat is Marc Coma, the 2009 Dakar winner. He knows he's got competition from Cyril Desprez as the youngsters are coming through the ranks as well. So the amiable Spaniard has never been far from two wheels all year. Here, training up in the mountains above his beloved Barcelona.
Vamos a sufrir mucho.
We're going to suffer, especially in Argentina and Chile, with this air restrictor. We're going to suffer with the heat and the altitude. There is less air up in the mountains, and this air is going to be further thinned out by the heat. It's obviously going to be harder and harder the higher we go.
Va a complicar seguramente todavía más que nuestra moto pueda rendir a un nivel alto.
Coma's teammates are fellow Spaniard Jordi Villadoms and Dutchman Henk Knoyman. Cyril Desprez comes to this year's Dakar as the 2009 Rally Raid World Cup champion. He's absolutely on the crest of a wave. The Frenchman is a two-time winner of the event, but this year he's switching from Pirelli to Michelin tyres. An interesting move. Desprez telling us that it's going to be the air restrictor that will obviously restrict the air going into the engine, but it won't restrict the experience of the rider, nor the time that I've spent training, nor the navigational experience that I've got. Finally, it's obviously part of the game that it has never been the fastest rider who has won the Dakar, but the rider who has managed the event with the least problems. That's going to be the key. Ruben Faria is going to be Desprez's teammate this year. Jonas Street carries the hopes of the USA. He led the rally last year but was hampered by a lingering wrist injury that he's had operated on. He's going to be strong with Team Pan Am. The man in green, as always, Palander's Oliver Setter, is again flying the flag for Norway. Reigning champion in the quad class, Josef Maciek has a new Yamaha quad with a V-twin 900cc TDM engine. He's built it for reliability rather than out-and-out speed. Marcus Petronelli was second last year, and he has extra special support. He's got his brother as his team. Yesterday in downtown Buenos Aires, the ceremonial start for the 31st Dakar Rally got underway. Nearly 1/3 people came out to see the world's largest motorsport event get underway. There was drama even before the very first turn of a wheel. One of the local riders had his bike burst into flames, but for others, particularly the privateers, it was quite an emotional moment. Josef Maciek, the leading quad rider, to go over the ramp. Here is that bike catching fire. This was not good fun at all. Annie Seal was in there for the amateurs, the privateers, the fans. It was a big emotional moment on New Year's Day. Australians, Czech, the ladies, the teams, the amateurs, the privateers, the Americans, they were all there. Lopez from Chile, Oliver Setter, Castello, And then the big hitters, the two people who are going to surely battle, Cyril Desprez together with Mark Coma, the reigning Dakar champion. He's the man with the number 1 plate to defend here in 2010. Way through the crowds with his co-driver Jean-Paul Cotteret, and the crowd lined the road all the way from the capital city of Buenos Aires all the way down the 317 kilometers into Cologne. By the time the sunset was coming on, all the crowd cheering on Marcos and Alejandro Patronelli, the two Argentine riders on their quads. But even though it wasn't against the clock, it was still part of the rally, and the technicalities had to be adhered to, making sure that everybody got into the bivouac. David Castera there welcoming the crews. David Fretinier saying it's fabulous. We did 317 kilometers, and surely for 300 of those kilometers there was somebody there cheering us on. Over 30,000 people looking after the crowd. Mark Coma here enjoying all of the support down from Buenos Aires. Says it's going to be very special tomorrow when the rally gets underway properly. The cars, before they got stuck into some of the very specialist local hospitality, and of course some very tender Argentine beef. A nice easy day down to Cologne. On to the first proper special stage of the 2010 Dakar. We're going from Cologne up to Cordoba, a long road section, some 349 kilometers before the clocks are started. 251 kilometers for the cars, slightly shorter for the bikes, before we get to Cordoba itself. The stage was shortened slightly after the massive amount of rain that has fallen in this part of the world over the last few days. The first 52 kilometers of the special stage has actually been removed. Therefore, the start was a little further up the road. It's going to be a stage that will warm people up, get them out of their New Year's celebrations. Riders and drivers well advised to settle into a good rhythm for the days ahead. Good to see Luc Alfond out there on the stage. He's helping out French television this year, the former Dakar victor, giving some support to Mark Coma and other bike riders there. A quiet time for contemplation and thoughts over the last 12 months of what has gone into things. Catching up here with Castello. He says, on the road section, I didn't put my earplugs in because I was listening to the bike. He's on the new Sherco 450 and he was really listening to how the thing sounded when it was healthy and how it was going. The water was up, but not quite enough in some areas. It was a welcome dip in more ways than one for some of the spectators out there at the height of the Argentine summer. I'm sure many of the riders would have preferred to be maybe the other side of the ford rather than going through it, but Chaleco making sure that his brand new Aprilia 450 V twin managed to get through, as did Cyril Desprez, trying to keep his feet out of the water. You don't want to drop it, you never do know what bad luck can befall you on the opening stage of a rally such as this. Well, David Castello, the winner of the stage today, brand new Sherco bike, and he wins first time out, the very first time that the bike has done a stage on the Dakar. Brand new team, brand new bike. He's not only the lead rider but the team manager. So not only is he brave Dave, he's canny too. Sherco, former trials and enduro constructor, they're based in Nimes in France. They've taken the big step to come into the Dakar with this 450, and they've certainly got off on the right foot. Chasing Castello hard today and only losing out on the stage victory by a mere 3 seconds was Cyril Dupre, the two-time Dakar champion and reigning World Cup Rally Raid champion. Was very happy with his day's work aboard the Red Bull KTM. Now this is a 690cc bike, but it is restricted with the amount of air that is allowed to go into the single cylinder. So the equivalence factor balancing the two bikes out, the 450 of the winner and the 690 of Dupre and Mark Comer here, absolutely perfectly. After nearly 2 hours of rallying, just 12 seconds between Castello, Dupre and Mark Comer, the reigning champion, who finished third this afternoon. Comer, he got into the swing of things early. He was leading at the first and indeed the second checkpoint by 2 and 32 seconds respectively. Fourth today, Jordi Villadoms. Villadoms on the 690cc KTM. He was quite a way back compared with the leading three. 1 minute and 45 seconds, but it's early days. It's the first stage of a 14-stage, 9,000 kilometre rally. It doesn't matter if you lose 10 minutes, maybe even if you lose 20 minutes. Just keep in touch. Fifth today, Francisco Lopez on the brand new Aprilia 450. He was therefore the second 450cc bike over the line today. Sinuous turns, not quite as flat out as the opening stage of 12 months ago. So really it could have been a chance for David Frétigné with his Yamaha 450cc machine to rattle on through, but he played it cool. He was sixth, just off the lead by 3 minutes he is this evening. The flying pole, Przgonski, he's on a big 690 KTM, he's seventh, only a few seconds behind David Frétigné. Keep an eye out for Przgonski. He was second in the World Cup this year. The Portuguese rider Gonçalves, he's on a BMW 450. It's great to see BMW's back in the Dakar, even though he made a navigational error at one point. 8th after the first special stage. Ruben Faria, now he's the teammate to Cyril Dupre here in this year's Dakar. 9th overall after the stage into Cordoba. Typical big, long, straight, wide open roads in this part of the world, giving Helder Rodriguez a chance to finish 10th on his Aprilia, whilst Frans Verhoeven suffered today. He lost 34 minutes. He's now 109th overall for the Dutchman. David Castello victorious today ahead of Cyril Dupre. Mark Comer third, Villadoms and Francisco Lopez. Chaleco being his nickname. Frétigné then in sixth, Przgonski, Gonçalves, Faria and Rodriguez.
J'ai attaqué.
David Castello, the winner, he says, I attacked, but this morning I was speaking with my mechanic and he said, David, we didn't do all this work for nothing, we've got to attack. I really enjoyed it, I kept concentrated during the whole stage, especially on my lines, because with the 450 you need to be completely different with your riding style. We don't have the possibility to launch ourselves out of the corners like we used to do on a 690. Got to keep the speed high. Great fun. It's a pleasure.
Je me suis vraiment régalé. Un vrai plaisir.
C'est un warm-up.
Cyril Dupre saying it's a warm-up. A sinuous stage, but enjoyable. And after several months of training, arriving here, you need to warm up.
Faut prendre la mesure.
You don't have the same face than a year ago. He says, well, no, I've got a bit of a stomach ache today. And actually for the last two Dakars I've had problems during the first stage, so I'm quite happy to finish this one. I think I rode well, didn't have any problems, so I'm happy to be here at the finish. It was a technical stage, a warm-up. It's very good to get into a rhythm and test the bike. The stage was shorter than usual, but with the heat, it's
Creo que ha
better
estado
for
muy
us
bien, ¿no? Una especial
physically.
al final un poquito más corta de lo habitual, pero creo que esta última parte con el calor ya también ha sido un poco física.
La Aprilia yo lo había probado en terrenos blandos, desierto.
The Aprilia prefers the terrain that's less easy, the desert with the mountains. That's why I took this first stage easy. The stage was hazardous, but it's good training, and the first day is always maybe the most difficult. Tomorrow it will be similar, and I will now wait for Chile, where it will be, for me at least, more of a rally.
Y ya llegando a Chile a hacer una carrera más de rally.
Stage 2 of the 2010 Argentina-Chile Dakar. We move onwards, closer to the Andes. From Cordoba, we move to La Rioja. 355 kilometers for the car, slightly shorter for the bikes. A total distance as we come into La Rioja. It's a big day. It's nearly 400 miles. Sunshine, sunshine. Oh no, that was certainly not the order of the day as dawn broke over the hills outside Argentina's second city, Cordoba. At the start line, the bikes were all ready to rock and roll, and it was going to be very difficult indeed. Many people coming, of course, with their summer kit. They didn't quite factor in this rain. Wintry conditions, not quite cold. Problems for Frans Verhoeven. He said, today I left in good spirits, the engine was running well, I arrived at the stage on good time, and I was looking forward to a good day. But after about 8 kilometres, my gearbox completely locked. Rear wheel jammed solid, left a skid mark about 20 metres long, so I've walked back here to the start so I can now wait for my service truck. So Verhoeven on the BMW in all sorts of trouble. Yesterday with fuel feed, and now he's got a seized gearbox. Bad luck that for the Dutchman. And as the leaders took off, Castello, Dupre and Coma, they headed into the mountains and into the slippery murk. With Castello first on the road, Dupre next along, a couple of minutes between the two riders. You don't want to overcook it because the rocks and the drops are always there and ready to eat you. Dupre, he was 9 seconds ahead of Mark Coma after yesterday's stage. The only two motorcycle victors that are racing on two wheels in this year's Dakar. Both essentially on works machinery, but there you have the shot. Mark Coma essentially catching Sil Dupre for 2 minutes on the stage, so Coma making progress. But bad news for Coma, as news has filtered through here in the bivouac at La Rioja that he was caught speeding through some of the villages yesterday, so he was penalised 22 minutes. So Coma has really dropped down the order today, and Coma is in trouble. For David Castello, he continues the dominance of the 450s here in Argentina. Not quite the quickest on the stage today, but he has slotted himself into second position in the overall standings. The brand new Sherco 450, though no match for the vast experience of the ultra-fast David Frétinier, who's on once more the Yamaha 450. It's his 8th Dakar stage win, and amazingly, Frétinier's first Dakar victory in 4 years. Although the conditions were wet and they were damp and they were wintry, the fans were out there. Similar kind of stages to those of the World Rally Championship, and they were really getting stuck in. The trouble is, very many people were getting caught out by the mud, and if they weren't being distracted by the weather conditions, then they were in trouble with the things slipping and sliding all underneath them. Fortunately, everybody was up and okay in a moment, but you never know, if you fall wrongly, then you could be in trouble. Italian Luca Manca flew through the stage. The number 31 Italian, following the tracks of others ahead of him, and now he's on an unrestricted KTM 690. He's not one of the elite riders, so he's got a wide open bike. Fifth on the stage, just over 4 minutes back. Helder Rodriguez, sixth here into La Rioja on the stage. The Portuguese rider, he went well on the first Lisbon to Dakar rally a couple of years back, winning a stage back in 2006, so he certainly is at home on this kind of stage. Jordi Villadoms on the number 6 Red Bull KTM, teammate to Mark Coma. He's been up high in the mountains above Barcelona, training with Coma. 7th today for Villadoms. Alain Duclos, great to see him back riding the Dakar once more. Sometimes he's helping out the organisers, sometimes he's racing. Duclos 8th today. Ruben Faria, Cyril Depray's teammate, had a good run. He's inside the top 10, safe and sound in 9th. Now Fares on the Aprilia. He's the leading Aprilia. I hear you ask, well, what happened to Francesco Lopez, Chaleco, the favourite Chilean rider on the V-twin Aprilia? Well, he was in all sorts of trouble. He's down in 25th. He lost 20 minutes today, and he's in big trouble. Quick mention for the quads, the Polaris of Del Trio. He was up there at the end of the stage, battling wheel to wheel with the Spaniard, González Crominas. Just a couple of minutes between them. The people who started ahead of him. Local Andres Juncker with his machine, he had a problem. Obviously the radiator was holds, and fortunately some of those spectators who had made the trek up into the mountains were becoming more than useful. They topped him up with water, he put on his winter woolies, and then he got going once more. As always, with a cheer for an Argentine. Second stage, and a victorious stage for David Frétigné on the Yamaha. 450s, winning all of the Dakar stages so far this year. Castello close behind him, Coma and Depray. But overall, it's Castello from Depray, Frétigné, Luca up to 4th, Villadoms 5th.
C'était vraiment beau, bien vert un moment avec plein de petits
Winner Frétigné saying it was beautiful today, very green in some places with some little rivers to cross and a few small corners, but it was good on the brakes, so I was happy with my lines. Very technical, I really enjoyed it. The result is well, I'm here, but for me it was very essential to finish this stage and have fun. My position is good.
Prudence et patience aujourd'hui.
Cyril Depray saying, I was careful and patient today. We started in the fog and in the rain and on the muddy stage. It's just a nightmare to be rally raiding like that, but it's one of the new ingredients of this South American Dakar. We just had to finish this stage.
Bon, il fallait s'en sortir de cette spéciale.
Mark Coma saying complicated with the rain and the mud. With the desert tires, it's not so easy, so I tried to keep a good rhythm, but the conditions were very difficult. A very hard stage. Luca Manca, the Italian, saying, today it was very good. I fought with Rodriguez, but it was slippery and dangerous. Many riders had fallen. The most important thing was to stay on the bike. It's only a short stage today. The real Dakar starts tomorrow with a hard test, so it's important that I keep the rhythm of this first stage as the rally is long. It's stage 3 of the Argentina-Chile Dakar for 2010 as we move from La Rioja on towards Fiambala. A long road section, 259 kilometres before the stage itself. Actually not that long, at only 182, that's 113 miles, straight into the bivouac at Fiambala. Much better scenes at the start of this stage 3 than the one 24 hours earlier. The rain had gone on and the conditions really were quite African. Down there at the start line, all of the bikes made a pre-dawn start to travel the 259 kilometers on the road section before the special stage itself. Jonas Streets for America just lining up there, whilst Luca Manca, who did well yesterday, said everything's all right, I'm up to 4th in the overall standings, but today we start this first part of the desert. Still a long way, but I hope by the rest day I will still have some strength available. The bikes head off into the distance, 2 minutes between the top 10, whilst by the time they got down to the quads there was quite a few tracks on the road and everybody had a chance to, well, follow where people had gone before. Down there in the fesh of the dry rivers, one of the quads ran into problems and he was immediately in real big problems. The medical crews, though, tending to him, and as you can see, no better medical attention in such a remote part of the world. Also a massive problem for Jordi Villadoms, the Spaniard who is Mark Comer's teammate on the Red Bull KTM squad. He fell off and he was complaining of a back problem, back pain, so immediately he was helicoptered out, and that's big news because now Mark Comer hasn't got a water carrier. He's got nobody to prop him up from underneath. Now Mark Comer, he had a 22-minute penalty on the first stage. He only got informed of that on stage 2 24 hours ago, so you rather thought that Mark Comer, as the reigning champion, was deserving of much better luck coming into this, the third stage. Comer, well, he was playing at even Stevens. He was actually running into problems with his bike, even though he managed to catch David Castello on the stage. So that's for a couple of minutes. So Comer is up there. But remember that Comer in the overall standings is started the day 22 minutes and 37 seconds behind the overall leader. But then the drama began to unfold. Comer having problems with the bike overheating, and because hot engines never want to start, that's exactly what was going on. David Castello came over to offer Comer some help. At one point, Comer shooed him on, but then Castello was actually in trouble himself. So Comer, Castello in all sorts of trouble himself. But in the end, the pair of them got each other going, and Castello says, I'm okay, if you tell me to go, I'm gonna go. What a gentleman Castello was to try and help out Mark Comer. He says 30 kilometers in, the bike was having problems, and then the engine stopped. I'm trying to restart it. I just hope I can find out how. And one last turn of that engine. Was it going to work? Well, Mark knows the bike inside out, upside down, back to front. And he gives it one more push to try and push some fuel through. Obviously the fuel's vaporizing, so try and get a bit of liquid in there rather than gas. Fingers crossed, and it fires. So Comer managing to get going, but that problem has cost him 21 minutes. He's lucky to get into the bivouac this evening here at Fiambala. Comer now 42 minutes down in the overall standings. That's a lot to try and catch up. So whilst Comer and Castello were having problems, what about number 2, the two-time winner of the Dakar in the past, Frenchman Cyril Dupre? Again on exactly the same kind of motorbike as Mark Comer, so would he run into problems? Certainly not for Dupre. He was victorious on the stage, winning it by over 10 minutes. Helder Rodriguez was chasing Cyril Dupre on the stage hard, and he was those 10 minutes back of the Frenchman. So Rodriguez has now slotted himself up to third in the overall standings, whilst Dupre heads it tonight. Massive crowds out, big massive marketing campaign on radio, in the press, and all of the South American television stations here promoting the Dakar and for the safe areas where the fans can watch. And they saw Gonçalves come through third on his BMW, so three makes a motorcycle in the top three today: KTM, Yamaha and BMW. The Dakar organisers bringing in the 450s with Yamaha, BMW, Sherco and Aprilia, and it's certainly working. So what of the stage one victor, Casteau, who was trying to help out Mark Coma earlier in the stage? He lost time, he lost about 12 minutes, but he is still in second position in the overall standings behind Dupre. He's in touch, he's still doing exceptionally well for the Sherco. Francisco Lopez, the Chilean hero, Chaleco being his nickname, on that brand new V-twin Aprilia. It's certainly got the grunt, it's been able to push its way up through the sand, and after the bad day that he had 24 hours ago, fifth for him today. He's still down in seventh overall. Alain Declos still getting used to riding the big KTM after having a year off, and he's up to fifth in the overall standings. That's pretty impressive, just jumping straight back on a monster machine such as that. And just as they thought it was getting dry, they have to go through a river again. Luka Manka, the man who started fourth overall, finished the day in exactly the same position. He lost 17 minutes to Dupre in the overall standings, but actually only 5 to the man ahead of him, David Casteau. But what of the man who was victorious yesterday? Drama befalling another rider in the shape of David Frétinier with his Yamaha. He lost nearly 2 hours today with a problem on the Yamaha. It's unusual to see the Yamaha run into such technical problems, but Frétinier had those problems down to scorching temperatures. Also, the navigation for everybody was significantly different. People going every which way, but seemingly forward. But fortunately, in those searing temperatures, the fans from Argentina were out, and they were able to help. Goodness for the spectators. The riders, of course, always helping each other out. The whole ambience of camaraderie on this Dakar rally really is unmatched. Radiators overheated, temperatures approaching 122 degrees for some of the water in some of the radiators that we heard on the stage at Fiambala. And at some points, the spectators were really getting stuck in. It was just like a pit stop in the Le Mans 24-hour race, or maybe for others, it was just like, I don't know, the Tour de France, pouring water down their backs and giving them a little bit of cooling. Never, ever has a drink of water been so sweet. Spectators decided to, well, take command towards Fiambala. Third stage, and a victorious one for Cyril Dupre ahead of Rodriguez, Gonçalves, Casteau and Lopez there in fifth position. Look at that lead that Cyril Dupre has now got. It's just over 10 minutes from Casteau, Rodriguez, Luka Manka and Alain Declos.
C'est une de ces étapes où tu
Dupre saying it's one of those stages when you start in the morning and you say 182 kilometres, it should be easy. But it was 3 hours fighting on the bike. A real African stage. Physically hard with the heat and a lot of soft sand. We had to preserve the bike, which suffered in the first part of the stage.
La mécanique a un peu souffert.
And then over the last 80 kilometres I preserved the engine, so I was riding quite easily. But that's the way rally raiding is.
J'essaie de rouler cool, mais ouais, il y a du sport là.
Helder Rodriguez, second today, he says today very hard. I like these days, even if it was very difficult. I got stuck in the sand 4 times and sometimes I thought it was going to be impossible to continue because I was totally exhausted. But in the end, I was able to attack, and that's what got me second on the stage. I've climbed in the overall standings, so I think I'm now about third. Very happy. Now then, let's catch up with Frétinier. Honestly, he says, I don't know what happened. I opened everything on the bike, took everything apart. I even had a spare ECU and changed that, and it still didn't work. No spark, no battery. I changed the fuses, checked the wiring harness, all the kind of things that you do when you're training to be a mechanic. After about an hour and 40 minutes, my friend Etienne Lorman helped me. I was fed up at the time, so I was happy he stopped to help me in the middle of the dunes. A bad day, but never mind. Stage 4 of the 2010 Dakar, from Fiambala to Copiapo. We move from Argentina into Chile. A long liaison over the top and the border crossing before the first whopper of a stage in Chile. The bikes were delayed for an hour and a half this morning, the Dakar organisers giving time for people to get out of the stage the day before and give them a chance of staying in the rally. And this is only stage 4 under a 14 in total. Quite amazing numbers. Of the 122 bikes left this morning from the 151 that left Buenos Aires. Now the man who's got to get it wide open is Mark Comer. And Comer certainly did do that. He got a 22-minute penalty early on in the rally, and then yesterday he lost further time to be over 40 minutes behind the overall leader, Cyril Dupre. Now this is Comer catching Jonas Street on the stage through one of the dry riverbeds. Comer, as always, being as courteous as ever. Comer is cheerful, he's on form, he knows he's got to dig deep, he knows he's got to pull his finger out, but he knows that surely his luck is going to change at one point on this rally. And it has today, because Mark Comer has rocked up the victor of today's stage. He's up 2 places in the overall standings to 6th overall. Second on the stage and second overall is David Cousteau on the Sherco 450. That's one hell of an impressive result on the tiny 450 compared with the bigger but air-restricted 690 of Comer. Here is Cyril Dupre. He's continuing to lead this Dakar after this stage 4 into Copiapo. Dupre with an overall lead of just under 9 minutes. As they blasted into the Atacama Desert, drier by a factor of 50 than Death Valley in California, the scenes really were beginning to take your breath away. Not that the riders had much time to look. And what about the man who's been looking forward to riding in Chile more than anybody else in this entire rally, Francisco Lopez, Chaleco, on the Aprilia V-Twin 450. He might have made a couple of mistakes with the navigation, but 4th for him on the stage, back into his homeland, and he's staying in 7th position in the overall standings. Gonçalves, the Portuguese. Gonçalves, another good run from him today. And here is Luca Manca. Manca on the KTM 690. As always, that Italian, he really is taking advantage of the unrestricted 690 because he's not one of the elite riders that the organisers have then put the air restrictor upon. Helder Rodriguez, he's another one on the Aprilia 450, similar to that of Chaleco, and that V-twin, it's got a lot more power than the single cylinders of the Yamaha, and indeed the 450 of Gonçalves, so he's going to be up there, particularly when you need to climb, and climb indeed they did today, as well as drop from over 3,100 metres on the stage. Now Pal Anders Olavarseter, the Norwegian, he had trouble yesterday with his big KTM. It was overheating, but Olavarseter still inside the top 10, 9th overall. Olivier Pan, haven't seen much of him so far this year. Olivier on the Yamaha 450, he's got 8th on the stage today, and he'll be happy with that performance. Przgonski, the Pole, he's on a restricted 690. 7th on the stage, but still knocking on the door of the top 10. Alain Duclos, he had a good run, and he is 5th in the overall standings. Now, big news, because the reigning champion, Josef Maticek, is out of the rally. So, it's all up for honours, and it's all up for grabs on the four-wheeled quad class. But good news for Argentina, Alejandro Patronelli takes his first Dakar stage victory, just one place ahead of, well, you've guessed it, his brother Marcos. A family one too as they leave Argentina. That's a bit of a farewell present to give their family. But Hugo Payen with his BMW, he was rummaging through not just the book of how to screw it all back together, but really how to find the problem in the first place. With the 450, he says, over the last few days I've had all sorts of problems. Yesterday with the fuel pump, we changed it, and then we changed the engine, and now it stopped several times. I don't know why. The pump is just not working. I just don't know. The trucks were already cruising past. On stage 4, Mark Comer is victorious, just 2 minutes ahead of David Cousteau. Dupre in touch, Lopez and Gonçalves. But overall, Dupre, he continues to lead by just under 9 minutes from Cousteau, Rodriguez, Luca Manca. What a superb job ahead of Duclos. With a Coma saying today, well, I just had to forget the problems and the penalties, and I've got in a good rhythm today. It was a very enjoyable blast through the dunes, a long way away from yesterday's heat. That was just too oppressive. But I'm happy to be here in Copiapo. Cousteau second, he said, I made good navigation on the stage, I could keep focused throughout the whole run. I've got a good time, even if it was very fast, but my bike is still so surprising, and it's surprising me. It's unbelievable.
Elle m'impressionne de plus en plus. C'est vraiment incroyable. Ça fait plaisir de prendre un peu de vent dans la figure.
Dupre, the overall leader. It's a pleasure to get a bit of wind in your face with the dust and the sand and the navigation too. The first few parts of the stage were not easy. First, small dunes, camel grass and the desert. Chaleco, fourth today, saying it's better. Yesterday I had a problem with the fuel, and yet today it was shorter and it was cooler. Then we got into the dunes. I saw many people, and I'm happy to be... The Dakar has always given us some stunning scenery. It's reminded us of just how spectacular our planet is, and that's something that we really must be mindful of. André Lenoble, he's taken this into account, and he says, if we want to keep on riding through these wonderful landscapes, then we need to preserve them. We need to have a responsible attitude. Now he's running with 35 litres on a mix of ethanol and fuel, a renewable source of fuel coming from sugarcane. It's already massive in South America, but not so much in Europe. The ethanol allows us to use non-fossil fuels, a renewable fuel, and a fuel that can reduce the effect on the ozone layer by up to 80%. It's getting better for us as the others have seen that this bike is quick and it's competitive, so this idea really is a reality. Also on four wheels, there is a team of two cars from Chile running on natural gas. They can switch between petrol and gas, and they are in the rally to promote the use of natural gas in Chile. If we compete with these two cars, it's to give the important support to our country, Chile, to use this gas fuel. It's going to be important for us as an alternative fuel. You can find it in many countries all over the world, and it can now be used in many vehicles. Biofuels is nothing new in the world of motorsport. Audi and Peugeot, they've won Le Mans with a biofuel diesel mix. But elsewhere in the bivouac on the Dakar, Billy Jobar has another further step forward to make with his KTM. He's using hydrogen as a fuel. Radical stuff. When I accelerate, bubbles go into the water tank, and it's this humid air that's then heated by the exhaust, because we need a temperature of 400 degrees Celsius, and from there the hydrogen gas goes straight into the cylinder. We believe this is a world first on this year's Dakar. Maybe it's a glimpse of the future. I won't give you the ecological spiel, but what I will say is that everyone can work on this. This kind of technology can be installed on any vehicle. It lowers the pollution a little, but if we all come together with it, then there is a bigger gain. New technology as the Dakar turns green. Stage 5 for the Dakar 2010. We move from Copiapo right down to the water's edge of the Pacific, to Antofagasta. It's the second longest stage of the rally so far, 483 kilometers. Silver and copper mines are around this area, so who will strike it lucky? Stage 5, symptomatic of the area 12 months ago. Fog, 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 very chilly for the riders by the time they got to the start line of the Dakar's second longest stage of the rally. Cyril Dupre, David Cousteau, all taking time before the countdown, and then the off. It was Mark Comer who was off first on a big day. 3 climbs, and each climb approaching 3,000 meters in height. Now Comer was first on the roads, so he had to find his own way. He couldn't follow anybody else's marks. He had to just thread the needle. For others, it was, well, easier because they could follow, but harder because of the dust. At that hour in the morning, there's barely any wind at all. Once more, spectacular scenes on this Dakar rally. We're now into the heart of the Atacama Desert. But the race was on. Mark Comer continuing to try and get some time back after the 22 minutes of penalty and another 20 minutes of a disaster a couple of days ago when his hot engine, well, it wouldn't run, never mind even restart. So Comer, he knows that if he needs to ride at 100%, it's got to be now. That was exactly what he was doing, and by the time he got to the first refueling point, which is neutralized in time, by the way, to stop people rushing around, he says today is very difficult because it's hard to see. The navigation to find your way is very hard because I don't have a reference. It's very complicated, but well, I'm here. All is well. It's a long stage, and I'm going to take it easy. So Mark Comer, he went quickly, but then he had no option. He had a massive tyre problem, and Comer losing even more time. Now Comer is running on Pirelli tyres this year, as opposed to the Michelins of Dupre. I have problems with the mousse within the tyre, it's broken. I've now got to wait for my teammate to give me his wheel, so instead I think I'll take some sun. It's just not going to be my year. Comer eventually losing 39.5 minutes this afternoon. And in the end, it was Luka Manka who gave up his wheel. That's generosity, isn't it? Manka then eventually waited for Knoeman, who is Mark Comer's teammate, to come along, and they then swapped wheels. Therefore, the stage was falling into the hands of David Casteau, but then he had problems. Casteau, the winner of the very first stage of this year's Dakar, has crashed and he's out with a serious leg injury. He said, I was following in Chaleco's dust and there was something in the way. I went straight over the front of the bike, a proper rally raid fall. And my Dakar is now over. They're falling like flies here in 2010. We've never seen anything like this in Dakars before at such an early stage. So therefore it was down to Cyril Dupre to try and, well, not only defend his lead, that was pretty well done and dusted with the demise of Casteau today, but now Dupre has a pretty clear run at the front of the order. He's now got nearly 38 minutes worth of advantage in the overall standings. Do note that Dupre is the only one on Michelins as opposed to the Pirellis of Comer. But it was Francisco Lopez at home in Chile, his second day on home turf, who was victorious on today's stage, and victorious for the very first time with the brand new Aprilia 450 on a Dakar stage. The Italians back home at their base in Nawali will be more than molto bene. Now somebody similar to Comer who's got a lot of time to make up after previous problems earlier on the rally is David Frétigné on the number 12 Yamaha 450. Frétigné, he's had a good clean run today, only finishing 13 minutes behind Lopez. He may well be nearly 2 hours back in the overall standings, but he's 15th overall. He could still easily be top 8 by the time we get back to Buenos Aires. Place your bets, please. Ruben Faria, 4th today, 15 minutes back of Lopez. He should be pretty happy with that. Oliver Setta from Norway, he was ruining the heats into Fiambala 48 hours ago, but Oliver Setta was 5th today for Team Scandinavia. He's 5th in the overall standings. He's crept up without anybody really noticing. Helder Rodriguez, he's on the 450 as opposed to a restricted 690. Top 6 for him this afternoon. Now what about Alain Duclos? As someone who has not ridden properly for 12 months, he's now 4th overall after this stage 5 of the 2010 Dakar. A round of applause for Alain Duclos. Here's Jonas Street. He's gone up a couple of places. He's back up to 6th in the overall standings. The man with the KTM from Team Pan Am coming out of Washington State. It'll be a bit cooler back there at this time of year. Now this is Mark Comer coming over to thank Italian Luca Manca for giving up his wheel for no other reason except just to be, well, sportsmanlike. Fair play to the Italian. Now then, let's have a look at the results today. Stage 5, victorious for Francisco Lopez at home in Chile. Dupre being beaten but only by a minute and a half. Frétigné, Faria and Olival Setta. Therefore, in the overall standings, it's Dupre ahead of Lopez by a very comfy 37 minutes, Rodriguez Duclos and Oliver Alceta.
De estar en Chile, muy contento.
I'm very happy to be here in Chile, my country. That was quick stage that. First I was with Cousteau, afterwards with Mark Coma, who had a problem with his tyre, and finally with Cyril Dupre. It was quite a long stage, I had a few problems. Earlier in the rally in Argentina, I'm happy to win a stage here in Chile. Mark Coma saying, what are we going to do? I try to keep on the positive side of things, and I have no choice. Things are just falling that way for me this year.
Marc est un très grand pilote.
Mark is a great rider with very many qualities, and he's very professional. But it's a nightmare because we can't battle, we can't race equally. It's just the way motorsport is. Last year I played my part. We must pay attention to these difficult stones in the stage which can damage our tyres. It's quick stage though, you can easily destroy the moose. You've got to be prudent.
Sono fermato per aiutare Coma.
I helped Coma, who broke his tyre, and then I waited for Neumann, who then gave me his. It's my first Dakar. I will do others. I'm riding without a restrictor, so if I can save Mark. It's going to be a very dusty third of the stage once they leave Antofagasta, going from the coast up road by 180 kilometres to the start of the stage. It's a big one, 418 kilometres, looping right round to the beach, literally, at Iquique. Dust, dust, dust is going to be the order of this, the sixth stage of the 2010 Dakar. Assembled at the start line just after dawn, everybody preparing themselves for the off, and everybody preparing themselves for the dust, and then the very fast end to the stage before a massive erg. That's the expression for a massive dune that will then drop these guys literally down onto the beach and the Pacific Ocean at Iquique. First on the roads, the victor of yesterday's stage, Francisco Lopez, the local rider. But he had company in those early few kilometres. Everybody was following him. Fratinier was in there, Alain Duclos, Consalves, Ruben Faria, Palandos, Oliver Alceta was all in there, and it was difficult for Lopez really to get away, because with 2 minutes between the leading 10 riders off the line, and that dust as a bit of a telltale, there really is no escaping on those massive wide open plains. So the further back you started, the more of an advantage you gained. Here on the edge of the Atacama Desert, the scenery once more absolutely breathtaking, but terrible news just after the first 10 kilometres on the stage. Italian Luca Manca crashed off his KTM. He has been airlifted away with serious head injuries. Our prayers are with him. But the race continued, with Cyril Dupre leading at the first control point and then losing a little bit of an advantage by the time he came to the refuelling. The neutralised section, Dupre in first, and saying to us, it's part of rally raiding when you're early on in the stage. Sometimes you forget that you're actually racing because you're out there on your own and you get distracted. What was your maximum speed? We had 180 clicks in the helicopter. He says, no, you were faster than me. I reckon I had about 158, which is just under 100 miles an hour. So these guys, they had a few minutes under the neutralisation in the refuelling to put some gas in and then get ready to get back on the road. But what about poor old Consalves, the Portuguese off the BMW? He was just coming into the refuelling area and a massive crash for the amiable Portuguese. the medical crew's with him immediately. He says, I'm so sad that my rally has come to an end here. It's the first Dakar that I'm not going to finish. I'm so disappointed. I was quick, I was close to Frétigné, but I couldn't see in the dust and I went straight over the top. Gonçalves, what a shame, he's out of the rally. A very battered BMW. Quick note about David Frétigné, he has leapt from an overnight 15th to 8th in the overall standings. But at the forefront, it was Mark Comer who had the best run. He has been victorious on this, the sixth stage into EQK, and he has begun his charge back to the top of the rankings. He has managed to pull out 10.5 minutes over the rest of the field, and Comer has leapt from 7th to 4th in the overall standings. This could be a real charge and a real finale of the 2010 Dakar, right to the last kilometre of 9,000. Cyril Depré, second on today's stage, those 10.5 minutes behind Mark Comer, and Cyril Depré continues to lead in the overall standings by 42 minutes ahead of Francisco Lopez. But it wasn't Lopez who was third on the stage, it was actually, as he celebrates coming into the stage finish, it was actually Helder Rodriguez on the 450 that was third on today's stage. The little Aprilia 450, he was concerned about the rear tyre at one point, but the 450 that was victorious yesterday with Chaleco, the nickname for Lopez, the Italian brand should be pretty happy with that. Rodriguez third in the overall standings. Now here is Francisco Lopez, an Aprilia 3 and 4 as we have now come into EQK. Lopez second in the overall standings, jumping for joy in the last couple of 100 yards as these guys have made a massive drop of about the last 3 kilometres down to the waterfronts. Palando's Olivalsetta, fifth on today's stage, but still losing time to those very svelte and agile 450s that were ahead of him. Olivalsetta, fifth overall. Now, the man from Slovakia, Jakub Ivan Jax, he's now in 9th in the overall standing. So the men who have not shared the limelight in recent years getting a chance for some now. Stage 6 and a victorious one for Mark Comer ahead of Depré. 10.5 minutes, they're precious for Comer. Rodriguez, Lopez and Olivalsetta fifth. Therefore in the overall standings, Depré still leads by 42 minutes from Lopez, but Comer closing in, he's now fourth.
Una especial complicada, la primera.
Mark Comer saying
había un waypoint
there was a very difficult hidden waypoint at the 29th kilometre. All the riders turned right. With the dust, I was a little bit lost. But finally, I didn't lose time. I suppose had a good rhythm. Even in the end, if it was hard for me, I had to pass a few riders in the dust. It was quite dangerous, but I tried to keep cool. I'm happy to be here without any problems.
Cette fin spéciale pour moi c'était magnifique et
the end of this stage was both magnificent and complicated because I almost feel seasick in these mountains. It was like a roller coaster. For 30 kilometres we've done downhill slaloms, almost a bobsleigh over those last few kilometres. Amazing.
Juste du bobsleigh pendant 30 bornes quoi.
It was a very difficult stage, very long, with a lot of navigation, but I kept my concentration right from the start. 40 or 50 k's in, I caught the leaders. We pushed until the end, but the bike is excellent, made a good result as well. At the beginning, I went straight into a dry river, and then when I came back out of it, I met Cyril and all the others Fratinier, Rodriguez, Olivalseta, many riders. We all found the best route there and had a bit of a race together. I tried to focus on the rhythm of Dupre, and we finished all together and in perfect conditions.
Y después del abastecimiento hasta acá me vine un ritmo mejor para tratar de recuperar lo que me metió, cierto, hoy día me metió Cyril y bueno, llegamos en perfectas condiciones.
Stage 7 of the Argentina-Chile Dakar. We move from Iquique back down south to Antofagasta. It's the longest stage of the entire event. Very difficult sand dunes to start off, and then a neutralization zone in the middle before the finish, again on the shores of the Pacific. David Castera, the sporting director of the Dakar, told the competitors late last night that the start of today's stage would be very difficult indeed. Not only a climb up into the mountains, but once up in there, the dunes would be very soft indeed. Only about 45 kilometers of those very soft dunes, but difficult nonetheless. If people aren't getting tired by now, they will be after today's stage. At 600 kilometers, over 400 miles, it's the longest stage of the entire event. So long, in fact, they have given people to 6 p.m. on the rest day, which is tomorrow, the facility to be able to actually return to the bivouac. They've really got 2 days to complete this stage. It is a whopper. Early on, Mark Comer battling to try and regain some time after the bad luck that befell the reigning champion at the start of this rally. Cyril Dupre out there with the number 2, Dupre, who is continuing to lead overall as he started the day, and Dupre in touch with Comer on the stage in the first part of it. But for everybody else in the stage, it was a different story. They were getting lost. Here is Francisco Lopez, who was victorious yesterday, and he knows his way around the stages in this part of the world, completely lost. That gave a chance for Portugal's Helder Rodriguez to try and catch up. Rodriguez, who eventually had a problematic second half to the stage after the 50-kilometre neutralisation zone that avoided a national park. Bizarre views for everybody on the stage. They were in the dunes, in the fesh, but at times they could see the beach. Now Palander's Olivalseta, he had a cracking start to the stage, leading at the first 3 checkpoints. Finally the Norwegian looking to click it into top gear and be on form on this year's Dakar. He hasn't had a great start. He didn't complain about machinery problems early on when everybody else, including Mark Comer, was having problems with the air-restricted 690 KTMs, but in the end he lost that advantage on today's stage, and with Lopez signalling and asking the helicopter crew which way was next. And look how soft this sand is. Lopez knows his way around, relatively speaking, this part of the world, can't even get over the dune. And just look at the sand falling from underneath the rear wheel. It's just like water. Now in the end Lopez lost a massive amount of time, some 48 minutes, but for the privateers and amateurs it was going to be a very difficult day indeed. They just had to follow the tracks of the pros that went ahead, but that is easier said than done on a 600-kilometre stage down to Antofagasta. Now there's some salt flats in the first part of today's stage which gave some spectacular views, but then we had some really spectacular action. Now this is Mark Coma catching Rodriguez on the stage. Rodriguez, who eventually lost 36 minutes, but Coma has made massive progress. He was second on the stage today only by half a minute, but amazingly he has leapt up to second in the overall standings. An hour and 6 minutes back of this man here, Cyril Dupre, who has won today's stage, and it's Dupre who's going to lead at the halfway point of this year's Argentina-Chile Dakar. An hour may sound like a big lead for the Frenchman, but Coma has lost that kind of time in the first half of the event. Will Dupre be scot-free on the charge back east to Buenos Aires? Ruben Faria, he was fourth on today's stage, backing up the pace of his teammate Cyril Dupre, but unfortunately he is still 3 hours back. David Fretenier continues to be sixth overall on his Yamaha 450, but he's well over 2 hours and 5 minutes behind. Alain Duclos inside the top 10 with his number 14 KTM. I remind you that Duclos riding first time on this Dakar for quite a while. Here is Jonas Street from Washington State in the US of A. He's had a more than cautious first half of the rally, but he's inside the top 10 and happy to get to the rest day. Stage 7, a victorious one for Cyril Dupre by just those 29 seconds ahead of Mark Coma. Fretenier in third, Faria and Olivalseta. Overall, Dupre leads by an hour and 6 minutes from Coma. Rodriguez, an hour and 20 back from Olivalseta and Duclos.
600 km, 7h31.
600 kilometers, 7.5 hours.
Et fatigué parce que
I'm very tired because at about 150 clicks in this morning I hit a dip and I broke the hydraulic system on my shock absorber. So since then I've just been on a spring. I've taken quite a few whacks to my backside, my neck, my wrists, all over my entire body. So since this morning it's been pretty exhausting.
Mais là depuis ce matin c'est éprouvant quoi.
Una especial muy larga, mucho cuidado en la velocidad.
It's been a long stage. We have to be very careful with the tyres at that kind of top speed. The first part was navigating through the dunes. That was very hard. I stopped to give some tools to Helder Rodriguez. He'd broken his throttle, and after that I stopped to help Lopez, who had broken his chain. It was completely blocked. That cost me a minute and a half or so, but this stage was very demanding physically, particularly for the engine, because we had many off-road sections between some big rocks. In there it was real first gear stuff, so it was a very, very difficult day. South America is famous for being macho, but on this year's Dakar there are some remarkable women riding. They live the whole Dakar spirit. Some of them maybe more so than the men. And one of them is German Christina Meyer, and she's not intimidated by the boys. She says, first of all, the Dakar isn't so bad for a girl because it's got a load of fit blokes running around the place. This year we've got 5 girls on bikes. Camelia, she's on a quad, and there are some co-drivers in cars as well. So we're not so few as you might think. I kind of like it because, well, it's much fun in the shower in the evening when all the girls are chatting and gossiping around. Like, how was your day? And have you seen that hunky bloke? Naturally, it's a long way for Tina to get to the Dakar, convincing family, sponsors to back her all the way. But she says, my dad said you're just crazy, I was never going to support you. But in the end, they are now all my fans. She was a big victim of the cancelled Dakar back in 08. She had a short Dakar 12 months ago when she retired on the second stage, but already she's a bit famous. So what's it like? Oh, people recognise me in Cordoba and Buenos Aires. I had quite a bit of coverage in the papers, on the television, the radio. People were really recognising me. Surprising, really, but they were all shouting, a woman, a woman. Got some photos taken of me as well. But of course it's serious as well. It can be dangerous. I found Tamsin, the biker from the UK, in the dunes on the third day. She was stuck there for almost 2 hours and was completely frustrated, about to give up. I stopped and I said, look, my day was pretty rubbish as well, so don't give up. I gave up on the second stage last year, don't do it. And we got here to the bivouac and we made it together, and we're still in the rally. We made it happen. We really drove each other on.
Und das haben wir dann auch gemacht, weil irgendwie, also ich habe das dann echt nicht übers Herz gebracht, einfach zu sagen, okay, adios amore, ich fahr mal weiter, ich muss im Rennen bleiben.
Unfortunately, Tina missed 3 waypoints for the incident. She got a 30-hour penalty, but that doesn't matter. She just wanted to get to the finish, man and woman. So no stage after 7 that have been completed, and we've got another 7 yet to go before we return from the current Pacific sides of South America, going back to the Atlantic side in Buenos Aires. Antofagasta, the venue for the rest day on the 2010 Dakar. We're here today, not quite on the beach, but enjoying the welcome that the Chileans have put on for the rally. It's about 700 miles north of the capital city, Santiago, and once part of the Incan Empire. Very much a bustling port. Massive sodium nitrate mines are in the area, together with copper and silver being found in them there hills. The President of Chile flew in today to visit the Dakar. Michelle Bachelet, the country's first ever woman to hold the position, was made very welcome by Etienne Levine, the boss of the Dakar Rally. Dakar is massively important to Chile, especially with more stages on their side of the Andes this year than last year. The fans, the press are all loving it. She made a visit down to see Francisco Lopez, the darling of the Chilean crowd, and also had a quick look inside Carlos Sainz's currently leading Volkswagen.
Thank you so much for coming. Greetings, and congratulations for your great success. Thank you.
Is in a week's time. Now there was drama descending over the bivouac late last night with Mark Comer and a possible illegal wheel change that took place in yesterday's longest stage of the rally. He was apparently caught changing a rear wheel, and upon arrival to the second part of the stage, Dupre noticed how new Comer's tyre looked. The stewards met late into the light last night, and after poring over hours of television footage, eventually there was a decision made this morning. The decision of the bike jury has given a penalty of 6 hours to Mark Comer. For Comer, it is now a massive blow to his rally, and indeed to the Spaniards' reputation.
Creo que es una injusticia.
I think it is an injustice. It's changed a wheel. There's nothing proved to say that I changed a wheel. From now on, I must say that I'm not in a brilliantly good mental state to continue racing. I'm going to give myself a day of reflection, and then I'll see if I start the rally tomorrow. It depends how I feel mentally.
depende un poco de cómo esté yo mentalmente.
Some say that the rally has been blown apart with Coma's penalty, leaving a one-horse race at the fore of the field with Dupre now in front. But other competitors feel that justice has now been served. For the rest of the bivouac, they continued on, looking forward to the remaining second half of this year's event. Cyril Dupre, unbelievably, well, he wasn't taking a day's rest. He was out pedalling his bike, even though he went nowhere with teammate Ruben Faria. Dupre now leads the rally, a healthy lead. It's his rally now to lose. Some special stages will be very different in the remaining leg. Less long, less demanding, but I'm not going to neglect the bike nor my concentration. There's a lot of things to do, and we did well so far during the first week. I just now want it to all continue. Dupre has got to keep out of trouble, and this will be his third Dakar victory come Buenos Aires. Helder Rodriguez is now up into second position overall. The Portuguese, with his Yamaha 450, is now an hour and 20 minutes behind the leading Frenchman. My strategy for these remaining stages is to actually simply attack. Lopez was quite close behind me, and before I've always been stuck in third, so now I'm in second. I'm going to think positive and see if I can get the victory and get that first position. Francisco Lopez is in fourth position, but it's Palander's Olivalseta who is in third now. So Lopez a little bit further back. Some dramatic welding going on down there with the Aprilia squad, but a debut that's gone very well indeed for the Italian V-twin 450. Lopez saying my strategy is actually day by day. It's changed a lot. I wanted to attack to make a good rally, but then I had problems and I managed to fix the bike on my own. I'm focused here in Antofagasta. Copiapo, next up. I want to get back into Argentina inside the top 5. We know that it's going to be very tight between 2nd and 7th overall. I don't want to do the same mistakes in those remaining stages that I did last year. Yannick Guillaumache, he also returned very late yesterday afternoon. This is in the rest day. He says if you go on the Dakar thinking that you won't have any problems, then you are just dreaming. You are wrong. It will never happen like that. And this is what happened to him. He's held together the entire front of the motorcycle with a bit of Heath Robinson Tom trickery, really, and the whole roadbook and everything was attached by that little electrical attachment. That little metal bracket was what was holding on the whole of the front of the bike. David Castor coming over and really marvelling at his ingenuity. He says that is a true African fix. Stage 8, Antofagasta to Copiapo, a short road section of 96 kilometres, and then it's the 4th longest stage of the entire rally at 472 kilometres, coming back to Copiapo where we were a couple of days ago. It's a biggie and it's still difficult. There's a long way still to go. $151 bikes left Buenos Aires, and 96 took the start this morning for this stage 8. Very cool and cold conditions after the 96 kilometre road section that took everybody down from the rest day at Antofagasta towards the start line for this stage. You can't believe it, the heat of the desert, and here we are, and people are literally hugging the silencers and getting what little coffee they can to try and keep warm before a final good luck and goodwill kiss before they were on their way. The Chilean fans really embracing this rally. The 7 stages, their side of the Andes, well, pretty well mobbed. And great to see Mark Coma taking the start today after the doubts that he was well, maybe not going to continue for the second half of the rally after his 6-hour penalty that was dished out after an illegal wheel change on stage 7. Cyril Desprez took the start though as the overall leader of this Dakar rally. He comes into the second half of the 14-stage events with a precious lead of just over 1 hour. The first half of the 472-kilometre stage was very difficult. Not so much sinuous, but a real wheel breaker. And you don't want to fall off because those rocks are sharp and they're angular and you can get caught out. Of the 3 riders in there, Stefan Svitko, he was 10th today. A good run from the Eastern European from a start number of 128 when he left Buenos Aires, the start of the rally. The landscape famous not only for these Dakar guys, but famous for the fact that James Bond was filmed around here, the Quantum of Solace film, not far away with its filming activities. So Cyril Desprez didn't have time to think about James Bond or any of his girlfriends. He just had to keep concentrated. But big problems for Desprez, because by the time he got to the refueling there was a bit of a panic on, and for Desprez, thank goodness, it was a neutralized refueling section. The front wheel destroyed, and as others looked on, there was no way that that front wheel was going to last another 2/3 of the stage. But for Desprez, his teammate Ruben Ferrier gave up his front wheel and mended the Frenchman's chances. The rear wheel was as such, but remember there's no air in these rear tyres. The rear is kept up with the mousse, the foam insert, for want of a better expression, and Desprez was then on his way. Desprez continues to lead overall by 1 hour and 20 minutes. Alain Duclos, 6th on the stage today, and he remains 5th in the overall standings. Hilder Rodriguez, though, has been the big loser of the day. He's dropped 2 places in the overall standings. From 2nd overnight, he's now 4th. Only 5 minutes behind that 2nd place. It's very close for 2nd, 3rd and 4th position after today's stage, returning to Copiapo. Przygonski, the Polish rider, 11th overall, 8th on the stage today, proving that he's turned the wick up a little. He needs just 11 minutes more to try and clinch 10th position. Olivier Pan on the Yamaha 450, another big winner today. You can actually see the pace of Olivier. He's up 3 places. He goes now into 8th position overall. What a stunning run that he has had through the Atacama Desert, the driest place on earth. Temperatures soaring once more into the mid-40s. Very difficult indeed. David Frétigné on the number 12 Yamaha 450, cool as ever, giving a little wave to our camera. Frétigné remains 6th in the overall standings, 2 hours and 2 minutes back of Cyril Desprez. Were it not for those problems that befell him in the middle of the first week, David Frétigné could be leading this rally. Another big winner though on today's stage, Palando Zulavalseta. From nowhere in the first few days of the rally, he actually led today's stage early on, and he is now up into 2nd position in the overall standings for Team Scandinavia. What a superb run by the Viking. Mark Comer, he was so close to being victorious on today's stage, probably still quite angry after that 6-hour penalty has dropped Comer down to 24th position in the overall standings. He's got too much to do, but an illegal wheel change halfway through stage 7, a wheel being given to him by somebody not involved in the rally, meant he got that 6-hour penalty. The victor today though, the 2nd victory for Francisco Lopez here in Chile, his homeland. Victorious on the stage by just 42 seconds ahead of Mark Comer, the Aprilia V-Twin 450 asserting its authority. Lopez also goes up 1 position in the overall standings. He's now 3rd. getting a taste of that champagne by the time he returns to Buenos Aires. Marcus Patronelli finished 56 seconds ahead of his brother Alejandro on today's thrash through the dust. Marcus continues to lead overall by 2 hours and 23 minutes. It's a brotherly 1 and 2 for Argentina with the quads. Francisco Lopez, victorious once more on his Aprilia, just ahead of Coma. Olival Seta, Frecinier and Dupre. Dupre was lucky today. He continues to lead by 1 hour and 20 minutes, but now it's Olival Seta who's second from Lopez Rodriguez, who's dropped to Clos fifth. It was after a rest day and a busy day for the mechanics once more. Yet another busy night on the Dakar before the stage got underway this morning. Stage 9 for the Dakar 2010, and we move south from Copiapo down to La Serena, due to be a stage made up of 338 kilometres, but after fog problems at the start line, it is now shortened to just 170 kilometres. Great atmosphere at the start line this morning. Riders lining up like a motocross race, like these guys used to finish the Dakar on the shores of the Atlantic Ocean once Dakar itself had been reached. But that was on the other side of the Atlantic. And here, the South American side of the Atlantic, today we got off with 20 riders by 20 riders. Thrashing away into the distance, everybody had a superb thrash over the dunes immediately outside of Copiapo, and big dunes indeed that they were. Initially the big stage of 338 kilometres, now shortened to 170, but organisers so kindly didn't leave out the difficult stuff. They left in the difficult stuff. Within minutes, people in all sorts of trouble, and within minutes, people stuck and looking for help. Philip Noor, the Irishman, he ran into problems at the 93rd kilometre. He took a wrong turning, and he ironically returned unwittingly back to the 12th kilometre. So he needed to do all 80 kilometres all over again just to get back to where he was. Oh dear. Also problems for Svitko, the man who was 10th yesterday afternoon, losing time. But it was the top 10 who finished yesterday on the stage who went off just 10 together. They were the first ones off the line. Lopez, Coma, Olival Seta, Frecinier, Dupre, Duclos, Rodriguez, Przgonski, Pan and Svitko. They were first into the heat of the desert, approaching midday here on stage 9. There was that element of follow the leader going on, and that leader was Marc Coma. Cyril Dupre, the overall leader, was a little bit further back, but so long as Dupre could see Marc Coma, then he would be happy. Now Coma started the day 19th in the overall standing, 6 minutes and 22 seconds back, so he's not in contention for the overall victory of this rally, but Coma no doubt going to be going for stage victories. Cyril Dupre keeping in touch over the spectacular ways across the desert. David Frecinier trying to keep up with his Yamaha 450 against the admittedly air restricted 690 KTMs, but still trying to keep up nonetheless. Dupre making his way up towards the front, and in the end Cyril Dupre continuing to lead this year's Dakar. He was second on today's stage, only 4 seconds back of the eventual stage victor. Dupre now completed stage 9 of 14. Is he going to be touching that trophy? Well, the answer to that is not with problems like this for Cyril Dupre. An innocuous dip over some rocks, and immediately the number 2 KTM gets stuck in the dunes. That bike weighs well over 200 kilograms when it's full of fuel, and yet the 2-time Dakar victor just throws it around as if it weighs but a quarter of the weight. Palanda Zulavalseta continues the Dakar Rally, second in the overall standings. That terrible first week that he had, but he's done well with the Team Scandinavia number 4 KTM. He's still struggling with the air restrictor and the fact that he can't really lift the front up with the torque of the bike to lift it over any rocks. But Zulavalseta safe and sound this afternoon. Lopez continues in third. He's just 4 minutes off that second position in the overall standings. Lopez unable to be victorious once more again here in Chile. 1 hour and 14 1 minute and 14 seconds was Lopez off the stage victory today. But it was Mark Comer who grabbed his 10th stage Dakar victory, his third this year. Just those 4 seconds that Comer managed to finish the stage ahead of Cyril Dupre. He's pretty happy. They were coming in from all sorts of directions today, as the 10 riders who had left the start line altogether were keeping their heads down. Now Alain Duclos still battling with David Frétinier, just 10 minutes between them in the overall standings, but ironically the pair of them crossed the line this afternoon absolutely side by side. Between Duclos and Frétinier here on stage 9, nobody gained nor lost a single second. Jonas Streets with the Team Rally Pan Am KTM has been taking it very steadily. He finished 13th, hopefully not unluckily this afternoon, and Street in 7th in the overall standings. He needs to keep an eye on Olivier Pan behind him. He's only 7 minutes back. Stage 9, and a victorious one for the 3rd time this year for Mark Comer. Just 4 seconds ahead of Dupre, Lopez, Zulavalseta and Frétinier. And in the overall standings, Dupre continues to lead by that very healthy 1 hour and 21 minutes. Lopez, Rodriguez, Duclos then 5th.
Bueno, etapa con salida motocross.
It was a motocross start, quite unusual, but the day was very enjoyable for everybody. We were all together, we jumped together, and I'm happy to finish well. It's just one more day of the rally and one day less before the end. The stage was different with the fast motocross part, and after Mark and Cyril gave quite a high pace to the rally, me too, even if I'm riding a 450. The bike is good and sound, I'm very happy. I'm in my own country, but these dunes demand such respect. In the end, it was a good day, and I'm very happy.
C'était bien fun avec un départ en ligne, ça faisait longtemps que c'était pas arrivé.
It was fun. It's been a long time since we had a start together on the same line like that on the Dakar. It was a good idea for us and for all of the spectators. A lot of fun. My goal was to avoid mistakes and control David Frétinier. If it's possible, I'm going to try and control him. I didn't see him for a while, but I knew he was behind me, and then I had a few problems of navigation. I thought he was ahead, and I attacked and finally realised this blue bike was Cyril's, so I took it easy, and eventually we all... The world's best, including Christian Califano, the former French rugby international. He had some technical problems towards one of the peaks. He says for the drivers it's very hard, but for us riders, well, it's hard all the same. And now he warns our cameraman to close his eyes as one of the trucks comes steaming by. Califano still in the rally. from La Serena down to Santiago. It's stage 10, a special stage of 238 kilometres. A total mileage today of 586 with the road section. The final stage in Chile. ...151 bikes left Buenos Aires on New Year's Day. 93 of them left the start line this morning. Just before dawn, everybody assembled. And as always, the Chilean fans there to cheer on Mark, who even had time for last-minute autographs. I've never seen that before, the stage start of a Dakar. Literally in the middle of nowhere. But the darling of the crowd was always going to be Francisco Lopez. Chaleco is his nickname. He was going to have a lot of work to do because that battle for second, third and fourth in the overall standings is getting very, very tight indeed. There were 7 minutes covering Oliver Alceta, Lopez and Rodriguez this morning. But for Oliver Alceta, he continues to stay in that second position in the overall standings, but he really did lose out today by the fact that he has that KTM 690cc bike. It just doesn't quite have the sheer agility against the smaller 450s. In the old days, before it had an air restrictor put on it, it may well have overcome some of its agility problems with the sheer grunt and the power. But alas, those days have gone. And for Oliver Alceta, he's got a lot of work to do. Oliver Alceta eventually finishing 8th on the stage today, 7 minutes and 20 seconds back of the stage victor. But more importantly, losing out 5 minutes to Helder Rodriguez and some 3 minutes to Francisco Lopez. Here is Rodriguez. He continues in 4th overall, but he only needs, by the time we have now come to this bivouac in Santiago, he only needs another 52 seconds. And you may well have lost a bit of time there. He was turning around only to see Oliver Alceta come through, so that he reckoned that he was on the right route. Very technical stage today. The twists and turns that we saw in the first part of the rally in Argentina now going to be returning as we return back over the Andes in 24 hours time. Cactus very much part of the scenery today. It wasn't quite a Wild West movie, but it was wild nonetheless. What about the Chilean hero, Francisco Lopez, aboard his Aprilia, passing not quite a cowboy, but somebody who didn't expect an Aprilia V-twin 450 to come rattling past. Now Lopez 3rd in the overall standings, but the battle between these three, Oliver Alceta, Lopez and Rodriguez, now covered by 2 minutes and 10 seconds. This is going to be a fantastic battle all the way through to Buenos Aires on Sunday. Leading overall, and still no problems for Cyril Dupre. An hour and 22 minutes of advantage with his lead. It's all safe, and he really is ticking off the stages towards the finish. For others, there were more fundamental problems. The pros managed to get across these rocks, but for these top-level amateurs, it was always going to be difficult, but the 450 machines proving a little bit more agile and getting them out of trouble. Spectacular scenery. When is it ever not spectacular on the Dakar Rally? And when is Mark Comer ever not spectacular? Comer winning today's stage, his 4th victory this year from the 10 stages that he has completed. Were it not for those technical problems and those penalties early on in the first part of the first week, he would be so much further up. He's 17th overall. Here's David Fretenier. This is certainly his kind of stage. 2nd today into Santiago on the stage, but 6th overall. He could close those 13 minutes to Alain Declos, who is ahead of him in the overall standings. Without a 10-minute penalty, that battle between 5th and 6th would only be split by some 3 minutes. Ruben Ferreira from Portugal, another Portuguese flying rider. Is he being let loose today to try and be victorious on the stage? Ferreira, who so gentlemanly gave up his wheel the other day for Detrey. Olivier Pain, again on a Yamaha. Our Yamaha returning to the glory days of Stefan Perrahansel, who was victorious those 6 times on 2 wheels. Will Yamaha Motor France return with the might of Jean-Claude Olivier behind them? Who knows? These could be classic Dakar years up and coming. Jonas Street played it cool. You need to with a drop like that on your left-hand side. Jonas Street 9th on today's stage and safe and sound in 7th position, but Olivier Pain is only 7 minutes behind him. Jonah doesn't need to make any mistakes at all in these remaining 4 competitive stages that we have in Argentina. Now here is Alain Duclos going off-road and picking his way through. Duclos continuing 5th in the overall standings, but that battle raging behind him led by David Fretinier. Chuffed with it, least of all this guy here, he's run out of petrol. I've broken a fuel line, he says. I didn't spot it earlier and now I've gone and lost all of my fuel. Unfortunately, as always, there are some spectators out there and they managed to top him up with a bit more motion lotion. It's the second time that I've run out of fuel, he says, and each time there's a camera there. Fortunately, he's got going and he's still in the rally. Now everybody was slip-sliding away through yesterday's stage. Many people getting sideways and then a little bit beyond, as it sometimes went not rubber side down. Everybody seemed to go down at one point or another, even the top runners on 2 wheels. And even if you're carrying Valentino Rossi's number 46, it didn't seem to help either. Stage 10 and a victorious one for Mark Comer ahead of Fretinier and Rodriguez. Ferreira 4th on the stage from Francisco Lopez. Overall, Deprez still away with it, but look how close 2nd, 3rd and 4th is. Just 2 minutes and 10 seconds between them. Duclos 5th.
Bueno, hemos dejado el desierto atrás, ¿no?
We have left the desert, the Atacama. Now we're going into southern Chile and a brand new terrain, very technical. It was a day of really slip-sliding the bike around, very interesting, and we try to demonstrate that each day. We're fast, we're quick, whatever the conditions, whatever the stage. Today the bike was very heavy, almost too heavy, but I've never ridden so fast on roads such as that before. Corners for 240 kilometers. Maybe a good stage for the smaller machinery, and I knew this before the start. My technical riding ability, maybe not great, but that is really what I expected.
På en måte så føles det litt bra, for jeg har gjort det jeg kan og jeg har aldri kjørt så bra på sånt underlag, og samtidig så det litt frustrerende, for jeg får liksom ikke gjort noe mer da.
J'ai plus trop le droit à l'erreur, il faut que j'essaie de...
Can't make any mistakes, I must ride as fast as I can. This stage we couldn't gain a lot of time, but I could easily have lost my way very easily. I took some risks, attacking, gained a few minutes, only a few, but maybe at the end I'll finish close to the podium. Fretinier 6th at the moment.
C'est incroyable quoi, depuis qu'on est parti.
It's unbelievable, since the beginning. I've never done the same stage twice, except of course in the Atacama Desert. Here is a new kind of terrain where we needed to adapt on the hard ground with a lot of braking, a lot of corners, and hard to find really a balance. It's changing compared over the last 3 days, and it's a great, good mix. Stage 11 of the 14-stage Dakar Rally here in 2010. We move from the capital city, Santiago, over the Andes Mountains to San Juan. 220 kilometers, arriving straight into the bivouac. The bikes were the first to see Aconcagua, the highest peak in the southwestern hemisphere. Nearly 7,000 meters high, it is a quite stunning sight in the midst of the Andes. It may well be the height of the summer. Down in the valleys it's very warm, but there are still snow-capped peaks. But there was no time for sightseeing for those on two wheels. They were thrashing down the valleys, trying to get the 220 kilometers done as quick as possible. Now, Mark Comer was first off the line this morning by virtue of having been victorious yesterday for stage 10. The battle was on though, because there was some confusion. There was big confusion. 13.5 kilometers into the 220 kilometer stage, there was a fork in the road. Now, the local policeman had actually blocked off the wrong junction. So everybody took, as was directed by the policeman, the wrong road, even though they tried to argue their way through past the policeman. These guys went 6 or 7 kilometers up a blind alley, for want of a better expression, and they were losing time as Lopez was asking anybody and everybody which way to go. Now, this was important because the battle for second in the overall standings is red hot. Here is the junction, and there is that guilty policeman just stood to the side. In the end, they opted to go the way that he was not directing them to, and that meant that there was big confusion. The riders who really did lose out, Rodriguez in particularly, in big trouble. That battle for second, third and fourth in the overall standings, it's been blown open once more. But the victor of the stage today, a first stage victory for Frans Verhoeven this year. It's been a while since a BMW has won a stage of the Dakar Rally, but a BMW has been victorious today. Jonas Street was leading through all of the checkpoints this afternoon through the heat of this Argentine summer, but the number 24 just lost out on the stage victory by 3 seconds to the Dutchman Verhoeven. How close could it have got? Jonah is really now alive on this stage 11. 3 more stages, including this one before the finish in Buenos Aires, and the man from Washington State was so close to yet another stage victory similar to the one that he had 12 months ago. Condors flying down the valleys, getting the right currents and getting the speed and getting the height. The speed though was all Alain Duclos. He managed to gain 2.5 minutes on David Frétigné today. Frétigné, who is chasing Duclos in the overall standings. The gap now between them, Duclos having the advantage in 5th overall. 1 hour and 54 back, Frétigné another 6 minutes back. Now then, what about this all-important second place battle? It still stays in the hands of Olav Alseta. Olav Alseta, who was 4th on stage today, he's put now a 3-minute buffer into Francisco Lopez, who is behind him with the Aprilia V twin. The hero of Chile, now gone to the other side of the Andes. Will that deaden or will it increase his speed without the hometown pressure? It certainly has increased the speed of some of the Argentine runners. We'll catch up with them later on. Big loser though, Helder Rodriguez lost 10 minutes to the people around him in the overall standings. Rodriguez 4th now, he's off the podium by 7 minutes, and he's got just 3 stages to try and make up the gap before what could be a taste of champagne in Buenos Aires. The alpacas looked on and were slightly startled by everything around them. David Frétigné, really, he should have been victorious on this stage, but just losing out by 3 minutes and 49 seconds. He still holds 6th in the overall standings. What could have been for Frétigné, that's really been the story of his Dakar. He lost an hour and a quarter with some electrical issues in the first week. Still leading overall, no problem for number 2, Sil de Prey, looking for win number 3 by the time we get to Sunday. His lead 1 hour and 20 minutes. Everything is cool and and very calm in the Dupre camp. We haven't seen much of Pedro Garcia, the Spaniard. He had another good day today, inside the top 8 on the stage, and he's continuing to be 10th overall, only about half a minute behind Przgonski, who is the Polish rider. Mark Koma, he continues in 16th in the overall standings, even though he was 9th on today's stage, of course going the wrong way, really did hamstrung his opportunities, so Koma 9th on the stage today. Przgonski 9th overall. Now Police, another Spaniard, he's had a big off today. Hopefully he's going to be okay, but medical crews may be having the final words. Let's hope that he is okay. The Marcus Patronelli continues to lead the quad class on his Yamaha, quite a distance ahead of his brother Alejandro as they return to Argentina. The two Argentine brothers, first and second in the class, and all dominant, hopefully, so far as they're concerned, to the finish. So stage 11 and a victorious one for Frans Verhoeven, winning on a BMW ahead of Jonas Street by just 3 seconds. Duclos, Olivalseta and Lopez. Overall, it's Dupre still with an hour and 20 minutes from Olivalseta. Lopez 3rd, Rodriguez 4th, Duclos in 5th.
Well, I'm very happy to be here at the end of the stage. I had a lot of difficulties in the first 3 days. We're here with a brand new bike. It's a BMW, and we didn't know anything about it, so we jumped into the deep with the bike, and now everything is really under control. The bike is running much better, and I'm getting used to a ride with the 450. And today I was attacking from the start of the special until the end all the time. First I saw some dust of Alain Duclos, which I doubled, and then at the end I continued to attack just until the finish, and I'm very happy to have won the stage today.
Had a good time. This last wash we rode was pretty rough, but I knew I was riding good and hadn't done anything wrong. Navigation's kept my head down, and looks like I ended up second. Not too bad.
At the beginning of the stage, the road was closed by a policeman, and he didn't let me go through. Then what he told me was to go up the wrong road. I was losing time, but we all got together as a group, and only then did we manage to get our time back. I'm happy to be here, though. It's one day more. It's stage 12 as we move inland. We go from San Juan to San Rafael. Short road section, big stage, then another big road section with a neutralised section in the middle of the stage, but it's the longest day of the entire rally with nearly 800 kilometres going to be covered. The stage today was 476 kilometres long, but there was a section in the middle of 120 kilometres that was neutralised. It was avoiding a park of historical importance, the Park of the Dinosaurs. Many dinosaur bones and fossils being found in this part of the world, so there was a neutralised section. But for Lopez, the man who started the day equal second overall after the adjustments overnight after yesterday's stage 11, he started the day level, absolutely level, with Palander's Olivalseta, and he had it all to do on the stage to try and get an advantage over the Norwegian. Lopez did exactly that, and he has been victorious for the 3rd time this year on the Dakar Rally. More importantly, he put 1 minute and 13 seconds into Palander's Olivalseta, so therefore overall Lopez is those 1 minute and 13 seconds ahead of Olivalseta, the pair of them 2nd and 3rd respectively. That therefore leaves Helder Rodriguez on his Yamaha 450 50, back in 4th position overall. He didn't have too much of a great day. 7 minutes he lost to Lopez. He continues to stay in that 4th position overall, even though he was spectacular and trying just after the sun came up. Look at the length of the shadows and look at the commitment from the Portuguese. The wildlife was running. No one could catch Francisco Lopez on the stage, but there was a change in the overall standings with Alain Duclos losing out. He started the day a couple of minutes ahead of David Fretenier overall, but he was the big loser of this afternoon. Duclos finished 7th on the stage today, nearly 16 minutes down on the stage victor, but so far as he was concerned in the overall standings, he has lost his 5th position overall to the flying David Fretenier. Still leading overall is Cyril Desprez. Riding the number 2 Red Bull KTM, he had some front fork problems in the latter half of the stage. The damping and the suspension was not up to what it should be, so he struggled. As always, dust was a problem, but the organisers cheekily put in some other navigational problems. I think you wish that the helicopter was sometimes never there, just as you fall off at the wrong moments. Here is Fretenier, the man who has leapt up to 5th in the overall standings. I do have to remind you, were it not for that 1.25 hour problem that he suffered in the first week with electrical problems, Fretenier would easily be in 2nd position and may even be knocking on the door of leading this rally alongside Cyril Desprez. Typical enduro quick stage for Fretenier it was today. He finished 2nd on it, only losing out on the stage victory by just 40 seconds. So Fretenier a big winner today, together with Lopez. Mark Comer, who was given the stage victory overnight after the navigational problems and mishaps yesterday afternoon. 4th this afternoon, but of course he's still way down the order. Jakub Przygonski, the Pole, stays inside the top 10, the runner-up in this year's, in 2009 World Cup Rally Raid standings. He's in 8th overall. Przygonski, young, a new spark in rally raiding on 2 wheels, and surely going to be a name to note for the future. Juan Pedrero Garcia, the youngster from Spain, has always had the attitude on this year's Dakar Rally of win at the slowest speed. It certainly worked well for him. He's inside the top 10, start number of 34 leaving Buenos Aires on New Year's Day. And he's always been a thinking rider, not taking any risks. It's paid off for him so far in this, only his 2nd Dakar. He had problems last year on only the 2nd stage, but he did get to the finish. Navigational problems though for Jonas Streets out there just after the sun had come over the horizon. The Team Rally Pan Am rider decided that he wasn't quite on the right route, and that lost him nearly 19 minutes come the end of the stage, but he did get through the Fesh. We'll see more of that later in the car reports. But Jonah confident and jumping into that 7th overall. Stefan Svitko, the Slovakian rider, all the 13s for him, 13th this afternoon, and he continues 13th overall. Even more innovation here. He says, well, it finally looks like this rally will end for me in the broom wagon. The broom wagon that comes along and collects everybody from the rear of the field. It sweeps them up, which is why it's called the broom wagon. Finally, a local turns up with a horse. So he says, well, I've got less chance of breaking this one, so maybe this is how I'm going to finish the Dakar. Lopez winning for the 3rd time this year, ahead of Fretenier by under a minute. Oliver Seta then Coma and Rodriguez. Overall though, Dupre safe and sound. He may have lost time, but it matters little with over an hour's lead from Lopez. All of our set of Rodriguez and Fretinier. Very nice. Very hot at the end of the stage, a lot of bumps, technical and very physical, says Lopez, the victor. Got to be careful with your riding. I enjoyed it a lot, even if it was very difficult. This stage was the hardest of the last few stages, most physical, hot, a lot of people, but I loved it. Those two battling for second in the overall standings, but all of our set are saying it was a long and hot stage today. The last few kilometres very difficult because of the sand. It was a little bit too bumpy in places, but I like the sand very much. When you make a mistake, sometimes my bike is a bit too big to chuck about in the sand. Lopez beat me for a couple of minutes or so, but I did a good stage anyway, and Rodriguez is behind, so I'm pretty happy.
Så jeg vet han Rodriguez tror jeg har greid å parkere noen minutter, så det er bra.
The stage started early this morning, long way away from here. Long day because I'm following the orders of everybody else, my team, my mechanics, my manager, my physio. I've got to take it cool. Each minute by minute I'm getting closer to Buenos Aires. I take my time and not to do any mistakes. It's not so easy to do.
Et puis voilà, j'essaie de pas faire de bêtises et c'est déjà pas facile.
Marcos Patronelli, the name here in Argentina. He's riding the quad number 251 and he was victorious on the quads last year. He started riding quads when he was just 5 years old and he got a reputation right from the word go for being a bit crazy on them. He did his first ever quad race when he was just 5 years old and he finished second when he was doing it as well. Everything changed for me, he said, after my victory last year. People recognise me in the street. I've now even got celebrity friends. I'm now closer to television and media, but that's great because I'm considered and I'm respected. Since last year, when I had my historical win, he says it's been great. Always the centre of attention, and the local TV reporter saying last year when he had that great victory he was a popular idol for fans who are not normally following motorsport. It's for the people now, people who don't normally follow the Dakar. The Dakar and Marcos now very popular in Argentina, different from anything else. Marcos is riding in the class alongside his brother Alejandro, who is second overall behind Marcos. The pair of them split by just over 2 hours and 20 minutes. A brotherly 1 and 2. That'll be a party, won't it? He says, Alex, my brother, has calmed me down a little. We do the stages together. He's much more mechanically minded than I am too. So if I have a puncture or a breakdown, we work quickly, fix it and go. For Marcos, it's a particularly impressive effort, winning his first ever Dakar 12 months ago on a quad, and he's now on the brink of his second, a 100% winning record. I saw the Dakar on the TV from Africa, but for me it was too far to go. I could never have believed I could be in the rally itself. Thank you to Argentina and the French organisation. We've had a rally here and it's great. For 15 days we're just in another world, working at night and racing through the day. The Patronelli brothers, a name in history.
Y sí, es un sueño. Si llego a Argentina va a ser un sueño cumplido, un sueño muy grande. Porque nunca me imagino a ver llegar en Dakar primero, ¿no? Es muy difícil.
Well, he's only got to get till Sunday before one hell of a fiesta in Buenos Aires over the finishing ramp. It's stage 13 and it's the penultimate stage of this 14 massive stage rally. San Rafael to Santa Rosa de la Pampa. It's still a lot of miles still to go. 368 kilometers today, a total of 725 kilometers to Santa Rosa. The Dakar is now in the legendary Pampas. The Andes are in the background as the terrain is increasingly flattening out. The first half of the stage would be reasonably difficult for these guys, but there wouldn't be very many dunes for people to negotiate. The second half of the stage would be very, very quick, similar to the kind of scenery we saw in the first part of the rally 12 months ago. An eerie scene just after dawn this morning, but soon the guys were into the dunes. The last dunes, and spectacular they were, particularly at such an hour. David Fretinier, now he started the day having clinched 5th position overall 24 hours ago, ahead of Alain Duclos, who lost 16 minutes on the stage yesterday, and so lost that 5th in the overall standings. So with Fretinier starting the day 13 minutes overall ahead of Duclos, he needed to keep up the pace and keep the rhythm and make sure that Duclos didn't cut back past him. No problem though for Fretinier on the stage, or was there? Because actually Fretinier lost exactly the same amount of time today than he was ahead of Alain Duclos, so therefore there is a 5th equal tie at the moment. David Fretinier and Alain Duclos exactly level, with just one more stage remaining in 24 hours time when we return to Buenos Aires. Francisco Lopez still within a chance of that second position overall. He started the day with an advantage over 3rd overall of just 1 minute and 13 seconds, so it was down to the Aprilia V-Twin 450 to try and get some space ahead of Palander's Olival Seta. The roads were big and they were wide open for these guys, but it was great news for Olival Seta, because after only 40 kilometers into the stage, he was first on the stage, and he felt that his even restricted 690 had the top speed advantage. For the last part of the stage, he was flat out at over 160 kilometers an hour. That now means that Olival Seta has won the stage, and he won it 5 minutes ahead of Lopez, so Olival Seta has solidified his second in the overall standings. Dupre, no problem at all. News actually coming in from Dupre late last night that he got stung by a hornet yesterday on his wrist, and that obviously worried him. He also thought there was a problem with the bike. In actual fact, it was just the low-flying helicopter hovering just over his shoulder. What of Dupre's lead? Well, it is now 1 hour and 4 minutes. He is absolutely safe and sound. The man who never really got into the stride of this rally, with bad luck and then a 6-hour penalty, Mark Comer, 3rd on today's stage behind Olival Seta and Dupre. Dupre just missing out on the stage victory by 43 seconds. And here is the shots of Alain Duclos, who really did get the advantage over David Fretinier today. Duclos 5th today. Olival Seta, Dupre, Comer, Lopez, Duclos this afternoon. Duclos dead level, 5th overall, equal with David Fretinier this afternoon as we go into the last stage in 24 hours time. The wildlife, of course, in this part of the world, there's a lot of it. The horses, the cows, and even a desert fox that we managed to see out there today. Przgonski, Jakob Przgonski, the man who finished 2nd in the World Cup in 2009, enjoying the spectacular scenery out there in the last of the few dunes. He got 7th, just a minute and a half ahead of Jonas Street this afternoon. Street, who's very safe and very comfortable in that 7th position in the overall standings. No problem for Jonah. Olivier Pain, Mr. Bread, as the Englishmen say around this part of the bivouac. Olivier Pan, 9th, but quite a way back from the rest of the runners and riders. Now here is Pedrero Garcia having a bit of an off. He gets a bit of a tank slapper going one way then the other, then it kicks him back and he goes down. But the Spaniard, who is in 10th in the overall standings, was perfectly okay and continued to the line. Now this was an evil end to the stage, with a waypoint positioned at the top of this hill and everybody having trouble to try and get to the top of it. Try as they may, it was just like that Austrian hill climb that you see on the television now and again, and it was a chance for people to try and get so close, but they're not quite able. He was inside the top 10. The organisers putting a waypoint right on the top of a dune, right in the middle of a relatively easy part of the stage. But even Ruben Ferrer was getting caught out on this hill climb, and this just gives you some idea of how difficult it was. The camera really does flatten things out somewhat, and it doesn't purvey the severity and steepness of the hill. These guys having a go and so nearly getting up, and only a few eventually getting up. This hill climb, just like part of the Erzberg Enduro that takes place every May in Austria, so difficult to get to the top. Drama for the Brit Craig Bounds, just 2 stages from home, and a mechanical putting him in all sorts of trouble. Craig looking for help, but for the Rally Raid UK squad, maybe their rally was going to fall apart, as others just couldn't believe how they were going to get up there. Back with Bounds.
My clutch gone? No, the gearbox is kaput.
In the end, it was kaput, and for Craig Bounds, just a stage and a half away from the end of the rally, that was cruel. On board with Van Loon and Verhoef, the Dutchman with their ex-works Mitsubishi. Even they had trouble getting the machinery to the top of the hill. They got stuck in the sand. Utter bedlam out there on stage 13. Very unlucky for some. Back with Van Loon and Verhoef. Was anybody going to get over the top of the hill? No. When you get to the end of the Dakar, you only remember the good things. When you don't finish, then you only remember the bad things. To get there. Stage 13, and a victorious one for Palanders Olavalseta for Team Scandinavia. Just 43 seconds ahead of Cyril Dupre. Coma third, Lopez losing out to the rest of them. Overall, Dupre continues to lead from Olavalseta, Lopez, Rodriguez and Fretigny. Today was a great stage for me. I started third on the road, but after 40 kilometers I was leading on the stage. It was a stage for the big bikes as we could push hard. The last hour on the road was 160 clicks for the whole time, flat out. It was just great.
Men I dag har det vært en løype for den store sykkelen. Jeg har ligget siste timen nå, så har jeg ligget over 160. Så flott og fint å bare holde gass. Dette ser bra ut. En fait, il y avait
There was only a small section of sandy track with about 20 kilometers of dunes. It's always a pleasure with the colors, the shapes of the dunes. They were so different with a few bushes everywhere. It started quite cool first thing, but then it warmed up relatively quickly. The first dunes were very enjoyable, but after that I had to watch my maximum speed in order to preserve the mousse inside the tyre. It's not our strongest asset, so I have to watch my speed in order to get here to the finish.
Hoy la velocidad punta, encontrar el equilibrio y llegar aquí sin problemas, por lo tanto contento.
Stage 14 for the Argentina-Chile Dakar here in 2010. It's the final run. A road section between Santa Rosa de la Pampa and Buenos Aires with the last 206 kilometers before the finish line in Buenos Aires. In the heartland of Argentina's agricultural fields and ambience, here in the Pampas. The start line atmosphere, thumbs up all of the way. Everybody who made it to the start line was going to make it to the finish. The traditional group photograph of all of the front runners took place at the start line this morning, including the boss of the Dakar, Etienne Levine. Smiles all round for everybody, least of all the podium trio, who had a little extra company. Everybody in party mood, including the marshals at the start, who waved off a very serene Cyril Dupre as he left the line. But it was down to Cyril Dupre's teammate, Ruben Ferrer, aboard the Red Bull KTM, who caught Olivier Pan on the stage. Ferrer, who has been nothing but a faithful teammate to Dupre throughout this year's rally, caught Olivier Pan, the big air-restricted 690, easily catching the Yamaha 450. Pan saying, well, I could try and pedal it as I may, it just would not go any faster. Next year, it's going to be 450s throughout the entire motorcycles here on the Dakar Rally. And Ferrer therefore winning the last stage for this ever faithful single-cylinder 690cc KTM that has been so dominant for the last 10 years. Overshoots on one of the corners he may, but everything was perfectly okay for Ruben Ferrer. He was victorious on the stage by nearly 4 minutes this afternoon, proving that he has the pace potentially to be yet another stage victor in years to come. For Cyril Dupre though, he was victorious as he came across the line, completing the final 206 kilometres. Victorious on the Dakar in Africa in 2005 and 2007, and now he wins a Dakar Rally on the other side of the Atlantic here in South America. The big three for Cyril Dupre. He now joins the real greats of the Dakar Rally. Palander's Oliver Alceta has had a tremendous final few days on this year's Dakar. Victorious on the stage 24 hours earlier, his first Dakar stage victory after 8 years of trying. And he wraps up second position in the overall standings after what has been such a close battle with Francisco Lopez of Chile. Team Scandinavia on the podium in second place. But what a result for Francisco Lopez. The V-twin Aprilia, brand new into this year's events, and the Italian Noali bike is going to be tasting the champagne on the podium in Buenos Aires. Lopez took it pretty cool on the stage this afternoon. 6 minutes back, but it doesn't matter. That's what it feels like for the Italian crew to get on that podium. Helder Rodriguez, victorious on his 450 450 Yamaha in Dakar's past, and not quite able to get on the podium here this year. 4th position for Rodriguez, just 10 minutes off the pace. Now this was the battle. Alain Duclos battling with David Frétinier, just 3 minutes between them as they left the start line this morning. Frétinier having the advantage, so it was down to Duclos to try and get the throttle wide open, but in the end it was Frétinier who just pipped his fellow Frenchman, the Yamaha 450, beating the KTM 690 of Duclos in the end by just 2.5 minutes. Jonas Streets from America clinches 7th position, crossing the finish line and inside the top 10 for the Rally Pan Am rider. In the quad class, Marcus and Alejandro Patronelli making sure it was an Argentina 1 and 2 in the quad class. For Patronelli, it's a 100% winning and finishing record for the Argentine. Emotional stuff. The final stage, and a victorious one for Ruben Ferrer ahead of Palander's Olival Seta. Rodriguez, Duclos fighting Frétinier, but not quite pulling out enough of an advantage. But it's Dupre who is victorious on his 3rd Dakar, ahead of Olival Seta, Lopez, Rodriguez and Frétinier. Today, Cyril made me more relaxed. I was 1 minute ahead of the 11th place overall, and I explained him that it was my intention to keep rubber side down for that last stage. Cyril said, if you're relaxed, I trust you, so do your own stage. I did it without thinking of anything else. I was thinking of his victory as well, but I won this stage, I got 1st position. Doesn't change so much for me the rest of the rally, but it's always great to win.
Merci mec. 3 victoires. Ah, thank you so much.
Je pense que toutes les victoires sont
I think all the victories are great, but this one more than others. It's the win of working and the win of experience, the win of a team, the Red Bull team. There's 9 of us and none of us ever gave up. Everybody wanted to fight and win. We did it. It's just brilliant. For 3 years I left Lac Rose in Senegal with a victory back in 07. 3 years later, 3 years of hell, 3 years of pain, 3 years of training, and now I've got my 3rd win. It's brilliant. Even if I ride quickly for 15 days and left my energies all in it, but it's the energies that are now turning into tears.
I remember this stage from last year, and my mind was on the back wheel, the moose, the tire. So it was a little bit easy out of the corner, and I didn't go more than 150 in the beginning, but after 100 kilometers I gave full gas at 170. I didn't care. I wanted to finish and took the chance, and wow, it's great.
Muy contento de.
I'm very happy for this podium. It's the 3rd time that I do the Dakar, and the 1st time that I finish on the podium. The Aprilia is a fantastic bike. The 450's done so well. An Italian bike, which is really quite young. We've won 3 stages with it. I'm very happy. This year's Dakar has seen a changing of the guard. Katie Wem have won every year since 2001 when they started to paint the desert orange. Next year the Dakar will only be for 450s, and it's got the Aprilias and the BMWs and the brand new Sherco entering the event. David Borghese saying, when we saw the change of the rules for the Dakar, we understood that it was time for us to work on the rally side of things. One of the main things was for us to support the return of the Dakar in Italy after the loss of Fabrizio Mioni. There was really something missing for us. What we've learnt this year is that the Dakar is the Dakar. There is not one rally like this one. We've only had a little experience in the desert on the Pharaohs rally for a couple of years in Egypt, but it's nothing compared to the Dakar. It's hard, but the Dakar is much, much harder from all points of view.
Ma la Dakar è molto più impegnativa dal punto di vista tecnico e da ogni punto di vista.
David Castello, he won the opening stage on his brand new French-built Sherco 450. It was a shock right for the start. The regular 690s were air restricted and they got beaten on the very first stage. Journalists said, well, they came from all over Europe and says, what is a Sherco? Does it really exist? Is it a small insect from the mountains? What is it? Nobody really knew what we were all about. Our advantage has been to make huge surprises at the beginning. Nobody could have expected it. Even the KTM guys from Austria came to see and how the bike was, all in carbon with our modified parts. They asked us what we had done to be so quick. It's a great victory for us, this Dakar. And all of this tees up next year, where it's 450s all the way. The last few kilometres through the centre of Buenos Aires got underway under summer sunshine this morning. For many, it was a celebratory day after 9,000 kilometres, 14 stages and over 2 weeks of non-stop rallying. The podium in downtown Buenos Aires was a welcome sight for everybody, least of all Cyril Dupre. He came over the podium victorious, raising his third Dakar trophy, 2005, 2007 and now 2010. The trophies that Dupre has. The Red Bull KTM squad celebrated atop of the podium. His teammate Ruben Faria, who was victorious on the final stage just 24 hours earlier, getting busy with the fizzy. He says this is a victory I'm really appreciating, particularly as though I don't know if we're going to come back here to South America. What I know is that this was a great Dakar, faithful to its name. It was difficult, it was long, it was complicated, many traps, but I'm finishing here with the first place and a big trophy in my hands. I'm going to take it back home and put it next to the others. It's going to be a nice, healthy, bulging trophy cabinet. And so too is it going to be a trophy cabinet that's going to have to be enlarged for Palandas Olivalseta. He got second place, just ahead of Francisco Lopez Chaleco, who was cheered on by his faithful Chilean fans. The 450 Aprilia getting on the podium. From Portugal, Helder Rodriguez made it 3 different types of motorcycle inside the first 4 places. Next year it'll be 450cc bikes all the way. David Fretinier lost trouble with electrical problems with his number 12 Yamaha in the first week. He will surely be a Dakar victor one day. Alain Duclos just got pipped to that 5th position by David Fretinier, so Duclos bagged 6th. The man from Washington State in America, Jonas Street, with the Team Rally Pan Am entry, starting from 24th, got 7th position, finishing inside the top 10, just ahead of Jakub Przygonski, the man who we will see much more of in years to come. Olivier Pan with his Yamaha got 9th position. He celebrated down there in the dirt as if he hadn't had enough. And finally, on the bubble of the top 10, Pedrero Garcia flinging his bike around. The outgoing champion, Mark Coma, finished in 15th. Were it not for those penalties, maybe he could have won it. Marcus and Alejandro Patronelli, the 2 brothers, they were 1st and 2nd at home in Argentina with their quads. A family affair, my goodness me. Annie Seal from Sweden was the leading lady over the line. What a superb effort from Annie, pint-sized rider all the way. So overall, it was Cyril Dupre just winning ahead of Palandas Olavalseta, Lopez, Rodriguez and Fretenier, the 450s, chasing the 690s. Alangiclo bagged 6th just ahead of Street Przgonski, Olivier Pan and Pedrero Garcia in 10th. The Dakar started on New Year's Day in front of over 1/3 people in downtown Buenos Aires. But soon the 14-stage, 9,000-kilometre rally got underway. It was a different year. The 690cc machines were restricted. They had the 450s snapping at their heels. And with new manufacturers coming in, it was going to be anything but a cakewalk in the dust for KTM. They had been victorious every single year since 2001. They'd been painting the desert orange. But was this a time when the Yamahas, when the Aprilias, when even the BMWs might just change the order? Problems though early on for the reigning champion, the number 1 plate from Spain, Marc Coma. In the sheer heat into Fiambala, his bike was going nowhere. Eventually, Coma got it going, but his rally had got off to an even worse start. He was penalised time, and then his teammate crashed out. Jordi Villadoms broke his collarbone. Soon into the foothills of the Andes, everybody was letting rip. Least of all, Coma, who was rocketing through the field. But then he had even more problems. The tyre had broken and he said it was just not going to be my year. In the end, Luca Manca gave up one of his wheels, but then cruelly, just 24 hours later, the young Italian had a massive crash and was taken to hospital. Still, there were problems at the front. David Casteau, he then crashed out after winning the opening stage with his brand new Sherco. Other problems befell Gonçalves, the Portuguese rider, crashing just before the rest day. Still, the stage victories were being battled out, with Cyril Dupre heading the order. As always, navigation part of the Dakar, and for the privateers, just even getting to the finish was a goal every day. The 450s struggled with top speed. The spectators took it, well, far less energetically. Others had problems as they showed off, much to the delight of the crowd. But down to the serious stuff on the stages, the weather, ironically, in the first part of the rally as we left Argentina, something resembling, well, Scotland on a winter's day. The locals got stuck in, helping anybody and everybody out to try and get through to the end of every single stage. The Dakar at times more part of a survival course than a rally. Mount Aconcagua, the highest peak in the Andes Mountains, then looked down on the Chilean fans as the rally made its way back over the Andes. The motocross start out of Copiapo was spectacular. It didn't really change the order, but it gave us great scenes. Palandas Olavalseta battled on with Francisco Lopez in the dunes. The difficulty of navigation, as always, very much part of the Dakar. Lopez was to run into problems later in the day when his chain broke. But in the end, it was a battle royale for second, third and fourth between Olavalseta, Lopez and Rodriguez. At one point, just seconds covering the three of them for those last two podium places. But the organisers have always had something up their sleeve. it was always going to be a difficult run back into Argentina. People were falling like flies. The energy levels had decreased and sometimes gone below the level of even holding on to the bike. For Patronelli, there was no problem. He was never headed at the forefront of the field, eventually coming home victorious by over 2 hours and 20 minutes ahead of his brother, a 100% record for the family on this rally here in South America. But drama on the rest day at the halfway point when Mark Comer received a 6-hour penalty for having changed a tyre during the stage 24 hours earlier. The stewards said it was against the rules. It was cold in the morning, it was boiling hot in the middle of the day. The Dakar had absolutely everything in 2010. Dupre was always headed. Even though he had the odd problem, there was never really a worry. His greatest worry though was damaging a wheel back into Copiapo. Fortunately he had his teammate Ruben Faria to give him another wheel. Mark Comer won 4 stages in total, even though at times they were going up a blind alley. It was eventually a policeman who had blocked off the wrong road on a fork, sending everybody the wrong way. Annie Seal's bike went 6 metres into a hole. Only the helicopter could get it out, whilst others battled through, beg stealing and borrowing fuel, water and energy from anywhere they could. Pedrero Garcia tumbled, but it was Cyril Dupre who came across the line victorious. 3 years since he last tasted the champagne on top of the podium. Oliver Alceta bagged second and Lopez a fantastic third for Aprilia.